Så, då är vi tillbaka igen efter lite tekniska problem här. Så vi gör ett nytt försök. Välkomna Initiator Pharma och deras vd Claus Elsborg Olesen.
Thank you very much. Well, that's a way to keep me quiet, take the microphone away from me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Initiator Pharma today and the recent development and where we're going with some of our other programs. Initiator Pharma is a clinical stage biotech company, and we are actually driving forward to a lot of highly valuable inflection points in the nearby future. So we are traded on the Spotlight stock market, traded under the ticker name of Init. So we are a clinical stage company, as I mentioned. We are registered in Denmark, but we consider ourselves a global biotech company reaching out to pharma and patients worldwide. So we have a seasoned management and board of directors with a lot of industry experience. And this combined team is driving forward a clinical pipeline consisting of matter IP, is protecting the compounds we're driving forward. And most recently, we actually had a positive readout of our phase 2A clinical trial in organic erectile dysfunction. We have about 3,500 shareholders, and this has been a very consistent number over the years. And right now, we have an ongoing rights issue for the clinical trial of IPET 2018. So we are dedicated to develop novel and superior drugs for a range of diseases, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. We have a clinical stage pipeline, so that means that we also actually have something early, but the two clinical assets that we have is the IPET 2015, which is targeted against erectile dysfunction. And then you will also have the what we call the IP 2018 program, which is also against erectile dysfunction. However, here we're talking about psychogenic erectile dysfunction, where the 2015 was for organic erectile dysfunction. I'll get back to this a little bit later. We also have two compounds in the preclinical pipeline for depression and neuropathic pain. And you can say, what is the common denominator here? So actually what we have is a very attractive pipeline of drugs that works in the central nervous system. They are targeting the monoamine transporter inside the nervous system. And the monoamines are signal molecules that are involved in a lot of different indications and a lot of different functions of the human. So that's why it can be a very broad indication from erectile dysfunction to neuropathic pain. So this is the leading between these things. So right now we have a rights issue ongoing. We started actually out getting our first institutional investor on board, Formonor out of Denmark, Aalborg, which placed approximately about 3 million Swedish going in. So we got a direct issue there. And then we have the rights issue ongoing with associated warrants that will actually finance the entire 2018 phase 2A towards what we call a proof of concept in erectile dysfunction. And we are very happy to have our first institutional investors on board, and we hope this will just be one of many in the upcoming time. This is just a little bit of highlight on the ongoing rights issue. You can find more on our homepage under the investor tab. But here we are selling a unit price consisting of 2 shares and 3 warrants for 980 Swedish crowns. So that means that you buy 2 shares and you get the 3 warrants for free. The subscription period is from 2nd of June to the 16th. So that's about a week left of that. And the subscription is fully guaranteed. So you can say that right now, together with the direct placement and the rights issue, we will get about 10 million Swedish coming in. But in total, together with the warrant program, we will get 23 million Swedish crown coming in, covering our financial needs with the current programs all the way up to mid-22. So we actually see this as a very strong way to finance the company going forward, and we are really happy to have secured the financing and able to go to the next level with Initiator Pharma. So getting back to erectile dysfunction. So as I mentioned, we have two kind of indications. So you can say it's a split between what we call organic erectile dysfunction and what we call psychogenic erectile dysfunction. It's of course in nature not this clear, so there's a lot of overlap. But here I demonstrated a little bit what is the reasons behind the organic one. The organic one is the one that drives us when we get older, when we're starting having, diabetes problems, we get cardiovascular problems, overweight, and lifestyle issues. It starts hitting us from the 40s, and it's a gradual onset. So it slowly comes in. We slowly see that it works less and less. Whereas the psychogenic one is driven by different factors. It's driven by depression, anxiety, performance anxiety, stress, and it can also be medication-induced. And here we actually often see a very sudden onset of the erectile dysfunction. So this is two very different things to treat, and it requires 2 different compounds. And for the organic one, we are actually having the IPET 2015, and we are positioning IP 2018 as a novel and first-in-class treatment for psychogenic ED. So just a little bit on the 2015 compound. So what we are looking at here is, I showed this graph before, we want to treat all the patients that do not respond to the current treatment. The current treatment are the Viagras and Cialis and Levitra of the world, all PD-5 products. And we have a lot of investigation been going on, and you can see that overall 30 to 40% of all ED patients do not respond to these treatments. So there's a clear need here to treat the non-responders to the current treatment out there. And this is the target population we're going for. Patients that do not get relief with the current treatment. So just briefly on the mechanism of action. So what we do here, again, we go in and we strengthen the natural erection signal. So the natural erection signal in the human body is actually started by stimulation. You get some kind of stimulation through being touched, seeing something nice, remembering something nice, or smelling something. All these are processed in the brain, and it ends up to having an increased release of dopamine. Getting the arousal feeling, you feel nice, and actually through a cascade, we actually drive a signaling that ends up with a dilation of the arteries, and the arteries is where the blood runs, and then you actually have an increase of blood flow into the penile tissue. So the compound 2015 actually binds to as a transporter that reuptakes dopamine back into the synapse after the release. So by inhibiting this, we can increase the concentration of dopamine in the brain, in the active site, the synaptic cleft, and thereby we can strengthen the normal erection process. So this is very different from everything else that's in the clinic. So we know that you can say that the PD-5 inhibitors, they can actually prolong a natural occurring erection, but we can actually make it happen. And this is the big differentiator between the two compounds. So as I said, we just completed our first phase 2A trial. So we actually got out. It was a trial consisting of 12 patients where we did a crossover study. We included moderate to severe erectile dysfunctional patients, so patients that do not respond to the current treatment. And we actually saw that 25% of the patients actually, what we call with statistical significance, respond nicely to the treatment. Of course, we also see signals in other of the patients, but it's not statistical this time. But just remember, what you're looking at here is a trial that is done in a very artificial setting. So we did this in a clinic, in a small room, where you get mounted an apparatus called a Rigiscan, so you actually can go in and measure the erection on the patient. This is done by a male nurse. You go into a small room and you are shown two movies, first a natural move and then you're shown an erotic move, and then we measure the effect with the Rigiscan. So this is a very unnatural setting. And of course, some of these patients felt this a little bit stressful. So you can say that this is the hardest way to do this clinical trial, is actually this way. And we're actually very happy with the 25% response rate. And this is actually very promising for continuing the development of IPET 2015 as a novel and first-class oral treatment for moderate to severe erectile dysfunction patients. So on the positioning, so where is we going to position it? We see, as we said, first line oral treatment. We have a clear differentiation to everything else out there. It's a very commercial, attractive market. There's a blockbuster potential peak sales of 1.5 to 3 billion, depending on how you do the calculations. And actually, we also see there could be a potential substantial off-label use of our compound IPET 2015 from the current PD-5 users. And this is driven by, there's a lot of side effects associated to the PD-5 inhibitors for specific groups of patients, and they could actually beneficially skip over and use our compound. And we're probably looking up to 10% of off-label use between the current treated patients. There's limited competition, so we can say there's nothing that is really a competitor at this point. There's two products out there that are products that are injectables. That means that you either had to inject yourself directly into the penis or insert a tablet inside the urinary tract. And this way you can also get an erection there. But these two ways of getting erection is independent of stimulation. So they just give you an erection for 30 minutes or more, depending your normal turnover. And then you're actually in a situation where this is not driven by you being stimulated. There's no arousal feeling involved. And we actually see that this is a really important part of having an intercourse, is the arousal and the ability to be stimulated to have an erection. The pipeline is fairly weak. You can say that we don't see anything novel out there. Most of them are new repositionings of the PD-5 inhibitors. So we don't see anything direct competition. There was a company in the UK called Futura Medical that was trying to develop a gel that you could apply directly to the penile tissue, and that way you could actually get an erection. They just completed their phase 3 and actually failed. So they're trying to reposition them again, trying to see if it's the gel that is doing something. But at least here we lost a big competitor that could actually, as they demonstrated, only could treat maybe mild, or try to demonstrate that they could only do mild patients, where we are focusing more on the moderate to the severe ED patients. So we have in 2015, we have a unique drug candidate with a huge commercial potential. So what will happen on the 2015? Well, we have the clinical proof of concept. It's just got it in, or we had it in for a few months. We have a first-in-class drug for the treatment of ED with blockbuster potential, and we are now seeking to ensure that the value creation of the development of 2015, so we ensure that we get the best possible value for the benefit of the patient, the company, and the shareholders. And this will actually improve the life not only for the men that we are getting the treatment, but also for their partners. So the 2018 program is a very different program in some respects, because we're now talking about the psychogenic erectile dysfunction, and this is often what we see with the mild to moderate depression the patient have. And this is very different, and as I mentioned now, there's a different way that it's caused, and there's also a different need for how you actually treat it. So if you look at depression, we actually know depression is a world, you can not call it a pandemic in these days, but actually a lot of patients are suffering worldwide. So about 4% of the global burden of disease is actually due to major depressive disorders. We know that in these patients, we actually know up to 68% of them have some sexual dysfunction. This is both men and women. And we know that medications or antidepressants often impact on erectile dysfunction, ability to achieve orgasm, and libido. And for this reason, a lot of patients do actually not adhere to the antidepressant therapy because they don't want to have these side effects. And of course, this is a downward spiral. You don't treat your depression, and then you get more depressed, and then you also have a negative influence on the erection by itself. So here we're actually looking at, again, a very clear unmet medical need in a highly attractive market. There are lots of patients out there. So there's a need for a drug that can treat, both the ED, the psychogenic ED, and also help with some of the other issues like depression and anxiety and all the others that was mentioned previously. So again, I take a slide on the science, and it's a little bit what I showed you in the first slide with the 2015. On the left-hand side, we actually see that 2018 has a component of dopamine inhibition of the transporter, meaning that we can increase the dopamine presence in the synaptic cleft, meaning that we can get a stronger signal from the dopamine, again leading to erection. This compound also has a somewhat higher affinity for the serotonin reuptake transporter. So that means, again, if we have the compound in, we can actually also increase the serotonin levels inside the synaptic cleft. This is a very fine-tuned balance, so you cannot just take any compound. There needs to be exactly the right level between the dopamine and the serotonin. Too much serotonin will be negative. That's what we see when you give antidepressants, where you increase the serotonin level too much and you have this effect on the sexual function. So you need to find a compound that is very balanced. And actually, 2018 is just this compound. It actually has exactly the profile we want for the antidepressant, and it also has the effect that we can see that works for the erection. So again, 2018 is a unique compound. How do we got the compound? So the compound is acquired through Sanyona, who had the compound in stock. It's been previous in a phase 1 for anxiety, so there was a lot of preclinical data and also clinical phase 1 data. Furthermore, actually the compound was already produced, so we had 3 kilo of the API, so the active pharmaceutical ingredient available. We have revalidated that. And then on top of all the antidepressant data, in vivo data that was present together with the compound, we actually get a comprehensive analysis of the functioning of ED with this compound. And we see very good effects. And this is what we compiled together, and we put it into a clinical trial application that we filed end of March, at the same time that we exercised the option with the compound from Sanyona and have been assigned the compound. We expect to have the approval during the summer and hopefully to do the first dosing just immediately after that. Of course, this depends very much on the current COVID-19 situation, and we expect to do the trial like we did last time. We run it out of the Mac clinic in the UK, most likely with one or more sites, including depending on recruiting from one or more sites if it's needed to get enough patients in. So here we have a first-in-class psychogenic ED drug with unmatched sexual properties, and we don't see anything like that in the pipeline. So very, very interesting for us. So how does the development plan look? Well, we filed, as I said, the CTA application. We filed that in end of March. We're expecting the CTA approval. So, and then all that consisted, of course, of preparing for the clinical trial. Then we will start the clinical trial. We will probably include about 21 to 24 patients. It will be a SAD study again, so one dose. It will be a three-way crossover at 2 dose levels, and we'll do just like we did with the 2015 compound. We will look for safety, tolerability, and we will have the scan before and after visual stimulation. So, of course, we have learned a lot in the 2015 trial, and we're actually going to use the expertise that we gained there to conduct the same or similar experiment for the 2018 compound. We expect to have the clinical readout of this, or the headline data, during the first half of 21. And then we're saying we are, just like we are doing with the 2015 compound, we will continue the business development of finding the right way to continue the development of the 2018 compound so it creates most value for the company and its shareholders. So as I said in the conclusion, we are on the trajectory to have a psychogenic proof of concept in first half of 21. So how do we envision the position of this compound? Well, we see it as a first-line treatment for psychogenic erectile dysfunction patients. We also see that this could actually be something that could, both be used for the ones that are medication-induced and also for people that are maybe not an indication but needs to be treated on both the underlying depression and also for the ED. We see it as a very commercial attractive market. There's a blockbuster potential in this drug. And we see a very limited competition. So we don't see any antidepressants out there strengthening the sexual function. We see some antidepressants claiming that they have less negative effect on the sexual function, but there's nothing that strengthens it the way we do with the dopamine component. So we see a very weak pipeline. There's no match for IPET 2018 out there. So this will be a first-in-class, and it will be a market changer. So what is the upcoming near and midterm significant inflection points? Well, approval of the phase 2A clinical trial application for the 2018 program is coming up very shortly. We want to start the trial as soon as we can after that, summer, August, September, depending on the COVID-19 situation. And then, of course, we want to continue the business development of 2018, making sure that we utilize the clinical data package that we had generated throughout 2020 that we got the final readout, and actually making sure that we find the right way to continue the development of the 2015 compound. And as I mentioned before, we will have the 2018 compound reading out in first half of 2021. So we are a clinical stage company with a strong pipeline with multiple assets, and we have a series of upcoming value inflection points, and we would like to welcome you all to join us and continue the development of first-in-class and proprietary drugs for the large unmet medical needs. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for your time, and hopefully I didn't speak too fast today.
Thank you very much, Claus. I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
First of all, the ED drugs, the market for ED drugs, would you say it's a growing market?
Yeah, so we see it is a growing market. And one of the reasons behind us having this, that you see there's a growing market, is that actually there's been done a lot of surveys that people are staying active for longer. So we know in a survey done in Portugal, and we know in Denmark and Norway, we actually see that men and women up into the 70s still remain very active. Where, 10, 15 years ago, we saw a decline after the 50s. So now we see it. And as organic ED is also very much driven by getting older, we'll definitely see the need for treating these patients. So they will seek some kind of relief to help them to maintain this sexual activity. So we see a growing market in the number of patients. However, you can say that, is the value going to increase? And we know that Viagra and Cialis is running off patents, so we know there's going to be less sale of these. There's going to be generic versions coming in. But this is not a direct threat for us, because we are actually treating the patients that do not respond. So whether you get the tablet much cheaper or not is not going to take away the patients that we are looking to treat.
And again, I forgot the number, but how big is the, let's say, Viagra and Cialis leftover market?
So you can say Viagra is right now, Viagra and the Cialis and Levitra is selling for about 4.5 billion right now, US a year, and expected to increase up to about 5.5 over the next couple of years. We can see that in Denmark and Norway, after the patents expired and the price dropped on these compounds, the usage increased, and it came to a kind of little bit plateau. Some people was just maybe stockpiling a little bit, but we definitely see that people are using these drugs. So price, of course, has a little bit to do with how much you are using of the compound, but I don't think it's going to be the change for us again, because we are looking at premium pricing for a product, but there is no other candidates.
And you are right now in a phase 2, and that's also like a very interesting phase for partnerships with big pharma.
Yeah.
Can you? I can imagine a lot of stockholders or potential investors wondering like how this discussion going for you.
Yeah. So of course, what we have done since the very beginning of Initiator Pharma, we always had a very good discussion with the industry, because they are the potential buyer at the end. So of course, we need to find something that can accommodate what they also hear from their sales rep is needed in the market. So of course, when we start approaching these in the very beginning, before we dosed even the first patient, they said, is it safe? Is it something that can be given to men, or do we see side effects? You are working on the central nervous system. So they were kind of say, so is this cardiovascular? Where is ED belong? And we said, yeah, but this is actually treating the underlying mechanism of erection. So you can say it is a CNS acting drug. And then we actually did the phase 1 trial. We saw it was safe. We came back to a lot of these companies saying to them, look at what we have done now. We did a phase 1. We had included the patients. We saw no side effects. So actually we took it to, and then of course the next question is, does it work in the patient? And this is what we have shown now. So of course we are going back to a lot of these discussions that we have, showing them the data, and not only showing them the data of what we have done, but also showing them what is needed to be done in the future. So they come into a situation where they can see what is that we need to invest in. What do they need to do to bring it to the market? And this, we think that we are very good at telling them what to do in the phase 2B, because we're the experts on this. And they are very much keen listening, because there may be a little bit different approach from what they have done before.
Yeah. Can you tell us like the difference between a phase 2A and a 2B, like let's say in perspective of time and cost?
So you can say in the perspective of what we are looking at, so our phase 2A was what we call a clinical, where we did everything in the clinic. So you're measuring, you show them erotic move. The phase 2B study for such a compound like this will be what the others have done, like Viagra. It will be an intercourse study where the patient or the man will take the substance and use it together with his partner at home. In this way, you would actually be in a much more familiar setting, and then there will be a questionnaire you fill out, and how just the sexual performance index that we used in the beginning. I showed you on one of the first slides, saying, did it work? Did you get an erection? Were you able to penetrate the vagina? Did it sustain throughout the intercourse? And these are the questions that then they answer on, and this is how you actually want the clinical endpoints in a phase 2B, where you look at this.
What are your approach of like going through this phase 2B? It sounds like if we go back to refinancing with hopefully 23 million Swedish kronos.
Yeah.
Like for me, it sounds very little to conduct this kind of 2B phase study.
Yeah.
Like
so the 23 million is going to cover the 2018 phase 2A program with 21 to 24 patients. If you want to do a phase 2B, you are probably looking at a number of 100 to 150 patients. You look at about a duration of about a good year, and depending on how you're exactly going to run the trial of the different things, you're looking at a cost between 4 to 5 million euros for conducting such a trial.
So how are you going forward?
So that's exactly that. So that's the way what we are doing is that when we are going to all the potential partners that we are discussing, we're saying, okay, we actually have an asset here that we believe very much in. You can see that it works in the phase 2A. We have good data. It's safe. So are we talking a direct sell or a partnership? And of course, this is a way a lot of stimulations, a lot of the discussion goes on. Will they take in the risk? Will they pay for such a study? Or will we actually trying to develop in ourselves to create more value? So definitely getting a pharma company in, seeing that this is actually what they like is good for us, because it validates when we need to sell that it's good value in the asset we're driving. However, there's also some companies that could be able to take it up right now and do the development themselves.
Mm. So it's like, what are you actually looking for in a partnership?
Yeah, so a partnership, I think, is so the way we create the most value is by getting the drug on the market, right? getting some royalty on a future deal where we see a lot of people using this drug. So we actually would like to see a company that has a strong commitment to treat erectile dysfunction, who has a sales force, who actually have the capabilities of taking the project forward. And this is the way where we can kind of maximize the value, both for the pharma company that buys it, but also for us and our shareholders. So I think that we're looking for a company that has an interest in looking for ED, who has expertise with doing it, so we get a collaborationship where we actually can say, if you take this over, we want to make sure it comes to the market, because that's where we're going to make up most of the money. Because it's not going to be an all-front deal, I guess, expected this time, but it will more likely be somewhat upfront and then backloaded with royalties at the end.
We got a question here from one of the viewers. You said 25% success rate. Who were the 75%? And how about age? Does it work? Does the project 2015 work? How about the age? Does the project 2015 work?
So you can say so. I think you referred to the phase 2A with the 2015. So. Of course, you're looking into the patients with 12 patients, it's really difficult to stratify if there's a common denominator. So all the patients are a little bit different. So you can say that I cannot say that the 25% that worked was exactly this phenotype of patients, and the 75 with this phenotype, because that simply we don't have enough data to say that. So that needs to be looked at in a larger trial. You know, who's actually why is there a specific group that treated better? Was it maybe the diabetic patients that responded the best? And that we don't know. So that is something that you need to do in a large trial where you have more data to look at.
And hopefully, when I do have any timeline for this, like when are you hoping of conducting your go back into the phase 2?
Yeah, so you can say, of course, the phase 2B for 2015 is also depending on the business development, what kind of deal we are able to put together, and who can partner up with us. And of course, this relies very much in how fast can we do it. I would say that big pharma is not known for speed, and they are definitely not known for speed in these current situations with the COVID-19. So of course, like everything else, we see a little bit of push in deal flows, but that does not mean that the discussion is not ongoing. So I definitely see that there's a way to find one of the companies, and depending on who it fits into and whether they are going to take it over and start doing it, it will probably take longer to get started. If we do the trial for them where they pay for it, then we could actually probably do it even faster.
All right.
So, yeah.
That was all the questions I have. We wish you all the best.
Yeah, it's very warm today. I'm standing here, but the sun is coming in over the beautiful water of Stockholm. So
exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much.